Rose Gardner's communities are being threatened by the importation of radioactive waste from nuclear facilities all over the nation, including my own Delaware River. This is nuclear waste that's being created day in and day out, year in and year out, where there is no safe way to dispose of the waste. And the current plan right now that Rose and her community are facing is that this nuclear waste will be trucked, trained, transported by boat, any number of means, brought to Rose's community to be stored underground in the hopes that it never gets released. So Rose has been a powerful voice for the protection of her community and her environment from this devastating plan to bring nuclear waste from all over to dispose of it in and around her community. And I thought it was just so powerful to be able to sit down with Rose and hear about the challenges that she and her community are facing from this major environmental threat, how she feels that the government officials of the state and the laws of the state are letting her down, and how she is looking for some sort of legal and political shift that could provide critical protections. So I hope that you all will join me in listening to Rose and learning from Rose.
Well, this area that we're in is very close. We're on the edge of the Laguna Gatuna. Now, Laguna means lake, and Gatuna is, I guess, just the name given to this. There's several of those lagunas here. One's Laguna Tonto, and then I forgot the name of the other two, but there's 4 of these playas here. And what these playas are is it's a little depression in the ground. And it'll gather moisture in the rains and stuff. And some of these have a lot of salt in them, but you know, what happens when these little playas get water is the little creatures can get water. Your lizards and your horny toads and your snakes and your rabbits, you know, they all need their water too. So it's not necessarily a desert out here, but certainly our sources of water are real small. And so this whole area here is part of the Permian Basin. But this particular road that goes down this way past the sand dune look area, which is part of the Laguna Gatuna, just past it is a ranch house. There's a ranch over there, and they have, I don't know how many heads of cattle, but I saw 3 loaded trucks move earlier, where it appears they're either moving their cows to market or to another section of land for grazing. All this is grazing land. Mm-hmm. And if this location becomes a high-level nuclear waste dump, I just don't think the rancher's going to want their cows near it. Mm-hmm. We know radiation affects our genes, then the DNA, and it most assuredly would affect the meat of a cow, mm-hmm. especially if they just were here for you know, a good amount of time during their lifetime. That would be a concern of mine if I was a rancher that lived right over there. But yes, this is our backyard. This right here is what New Mexico is like right here where I live in the area of Eddy and Lee County. So
let it pass.
Well, and it'll come on that camera. I think it's striking that we've got these big trucks going because we do also have other activity like the drilling. Mm-hmm. And so that's just a example of that mark on this landscape as well.
That's right. They have to go out and do business.
So Rose,
that right there pays taxes.
So let me ask you, so in addition to losing this natural area to a nuclear waste dump, and in addition to the threat of the nuclear waste actually getting out into the environment and into your communities, right? What has the threat of this Holtec nuclear waste site, and now the other one that you're talking about as well nearby, what has that done to your community in terms of your sense of safety and what it's like to know that might be coming to your community?
Well, certainly it raises your sense of awareness of just how much activity goes on around where you live. And when you're not looking, they will bring in the dangerous things. So I feel like high-level nuclear waste isn't here now. It doesn't belong here. We have our own generation of industries that include oil and gas that we have to have. The nation has to have it. And this company here, Holtec, is willing to jeopardize our industry, our livelihood, just so they can make money bringing in high-level nuclear waste. And the idea of safety is even highly more paramount because there's a highway less than half a mile away. There's a rail spur that will be built if this facility gets open, and it'll bring carloads of nuclear waste to the site. So you've got the transportation issue. Where's that waste coming from? It would travel from all the nuclear reactor communities that are being decommissioned and or wanting to move their high-level nuclear waste off their site. It would be shipped by rail and barge mostly. But once it gets close enough, they can go on the rails. It will go on the rails and come down through the northern part of New Mexico, through Clovis, on down through the Roswell area, through Carlsbad, and then here to this site. Now the site over in where I live in Eunice, New Mexico, is on the edge of the Texas state line. That site is Waste Control Specialists, and they have the similar game that they're wanting to play. They're wanting to bring 40,000 metric tons of high-level nuclear waste, and their idea is to build a concrete pad and just stack these on there. So that would, we've estimated, I believe it's 4,000 trains, or at least, let me rephrase that, 4,000 shipments that will go right through my town to get to Waste Control Specialists. The railroad in Eunice is in the city limits, but on the outskirts of town, and right along there is whole 2 or 3 neighborhoods of people that live there. So they're going to see every single canister of waste come through. And like I said, they're estimating 4,000 shipments.
So can you go through quickly, what are the threats to the community and to the environment of having that waste temporarily stored here, and do mention the fact that it may not be temporary.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what are the dangers? Well, first of all, it's been estimated that each canister of nuclear waste will have in it several assemblies of nuclear rods. And then the containers that they go in will be welded shut. Then those will be placed in a canister that will supposedly withstand the motion and rocking and transportation of the waste canister on a train. And you know, the dynamics of a train go like this. And these containers are so heavy, they claim they're going to need like 12 axles. And that's just something I read. It may or may not be true. But that's what they're having to do to modify the rail car that will carry it. But that's not just it. What if a train is carrying more than one? Then you've doubled, to me, you've doubled your problem. And so the other issue, of course, what we need to look at is when we talk about a break or a leak in a canister of waste, we know that the inside is not liquid. And these companies, oh, people call it green goo, da da da. No, we don't. We don't call it green goo. It is not a goo. These are uranium pellets that have been used, and they've taken them out of the reactors, and they're in these tubes, and they're cooled in water for a period of time until they're cool enough to put into a dry cask container. But then you got to get that container to one of these dumps that they want to build. Along the way, you've got, let's say it comes from Florida. You've got Florida, Alabama, all these other states, including Texas, the biggest state in the nation to cross, going through the Fort Worth area. My understanding is like a really busy hub of rail lines, and I understand Fort Worth is really feeling the pressure to stop this because they're really concerned. It's finally dawned on some people in Metropolis that this thing is dangerous. If something should happen and a container breaks and you have a leak, those pellets give off radiation once they're broken open. If that container is broken, you're going to have radiation. My understanding is if you're within 6 foot of an open container, you're dead. You'll be dead soon. You don't get well. So what if it's a layperson? What if it's a train wreck in the middle of nowhere and there's no response, no emergency response, and a layperson comes up on an accident like that? The consequences are devastating. The other thing, of course, is let's remember they call us interim storage, but in fact, at both sites, their interim storage range anywhere from 30 to 120 years. And I read one statement that if they keep going and going and adding phases to bring in more waste, the temporary storage area time could actually increase to 300 years. So no matter how you look at it, the way I look at it is it's not going anywhere. There's no permanent dump to take it to. And see, that's what makes this whole scenario crazy, is that it's not legal for a private company to take this nuclear waste from commercial reactors. It's just not allowed. It's against the law. And it's for good reason. So here the NRC is using all kinds of money to go ahead and hold these hearings and webinars and taking public comments and putting undue stress on us as far as trying to get not just one license but 2 license comments within the same period of time, and expecting something, different, a different answer. And the only conclusion I can tell you is neither dump is needed, neither dump would be legal, and it does not solve the problem. The waste will continue to be created at nuclear reactor sites until someone says stop. And I don't know when that will be, especially if they bring it here. There's no end to it.
So is there, when you're looking at the applicable laws, you've talked about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the federal government, is there much in the way of state law to help you in challenging the wisdom of this project?
The only law that I can recall that does not apply to this is a law that a friend of mine helped push through, but I believe it relates to high-level nuclear waste being generated. Our state won't generate high-level nuclear waste. So I can say we're not going to get a nuclear power plant in New Mexico unless that law is rescinded. But the laws that protect us here, last year Senator Jeff Steinborn tried to get a bill put through that would at least allow some kind of a board or organization to oversee this kind of operation, and they wouldn't pass it. The House did, not the Senate. So you got legislators trying to do some good things, and you've got the other side that doesn't want it. They want this thing here because they think the state needs the money. And that's really the only reason that supporters, it's always money, isn't it? But that's why the legislators and those that have their voice, that have not voiced opposition to this, are looking at just the money, how they can have their friends make money, not how the state is going to be better off. How can they make money? Do you realize that WIP is south of us about 14 miles? All you gotta do is cross that highway and go up the road about a mile and go down that way. So you're gonna have that's a very high level waste over there, right? It's transuranic waste at WIP. And what that is all the military waste that's used in bomb making and or what they call transuranic activities. They put them in those true packs. It's a different kind of container. And they take it to WIP and they put it on an elevator and they send that thing to a little over 2,000 feet in the ground to be stored away. Now they claim to have, I believe, 12,000 containers brought through safely. But that's transuranic waste like gloves, clothes, tools, equipment. It's not the actual waste. Now they're trying to bring actual high-level bomb waste to WIP. And that's another battle we're trying to fight.
Do you, thinking about Senator Steinborn and his effort to pass a law that would be helpful to protect the community and the environment from this nuclear waste dump. As you say, they call it temporary, but it sounds permanent, and certainly will be permanent if they don't find a permanent solution, right? So, do you recall why those who opposed the passage of that law? What was the excuse for saying we shouldn't protect our environment and communities from this proposal by passing this law? The law was about being smart, right? It was about being thoughtful, transparent, informed decision making. Right?
I can tell you that the ones that the gentleman and woman senator that I don't know them personally like real well, but I do know who they are and I've conversed with them. They buy this. That's all I can tell you. They love it. I think that almost to the point they would sell their soul for it. And why, I don't know. One senator is married to a physician, and she's a former school teacher. What's in it for her? I don't know. One guy lives in Eunice, my state rep. He's fixing to be a state senator. He doesn't see anything wrong with it either. Nobody will say there's anything wrong with it. But let me point out, those same guys won't promote WCS.
Because it's right by them?
It's in Texas. That's why. So it's the money. That's all I can tell you. It's not safety. It's not, I think it's good for the country. It's not, I think it's good for New Mexico. It's economics only.
Right.
They don't care what the other guy's doing. They just want their thing to pass.
Right.
It's really very, very ugly. It really is, because I'm so disappointed in so many of them. But I've found that one political party is all pro for it and the other one isn't. And you can kind of guess which one it might be, okay? But I have found that our lady governor has been most helpful and really brave. She's taken a lot of hits from everywhere. Right now she's being bashed for the COVID precautions that she's put on the state. In Lee and Eddy counties, our kids are not going to school because she says our counts are too high. Well, yeah, she ought to know. She's got the numbers. I don't. The thing is, she has also come out and said, hey, this is economic malfeasance if we allow this project to go through. So she has been open and above board. What we're hoping for is perhaps because even though your state government can say we don't want it, the public can say we don't want it. If the NRC says there's nothing wrong with this application, go, it'll go. Okay? Keeping that in mind, We are in the process of getting signatures on a letter to the governor asking her to set up some type of a task force to research this project from the beginning, from the inception, from the very beginning of how they got started and how it's gotten so far, and how in the world is this going to benefit New Mexico. If anything, I hope that she'll agree and get that passed, because the NRC is basically already approved. When you read those draft EIS, what it says is, what are the impacts to the environment, to the people, to socioeconomics, to environmental justice, to whatever, you name it. Every impact out here has been shown to be small impact. There's
By
small
the NRC.
Impact
By the
by
NRC.
the NRC. There's small impact to the land. There's small impact to animals and creatures around here. There's a small impact to this out there, but there will be a moderate impact once money starts being generated. That's it. That's the kind of moderate that they did put down. Once money starts coming in, that's where you'll see a change. Well, at what cost?
So, thinking about this idea of a green amendment, so adding to the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution a right to clean water and clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments, the recreational, the cultural, the scenic values of a healthy environment. The language is still in the works. You know, a green amendment can be used to protect people from bad stuff, but it can also be used to encourage your government officials to do good stuff. And I was just thinking, Senator Steinborn's legislation, what you're asking the governor to do, create that task force to be thoughtful, investigate what's happening here. To me, if there was a constitutional right to a healthy environment, that would really have supported those two important government acts to help protect the community.
Absolutely.
What do you see it that way too?
Yes, and the thing is, I wish it was already in place, because not only this isn't the only nuclear activity going on. In the future, down where I live, there's a small modular reactor by a company named Eden. They want to put one down there to create medical isotopes. Like, we need more. There's already a uranium enrichment facility outside my town. As we start adding all this nuclear stuff, more will come. It's just the nature of the beast. There's spin-off companies and companies that need to support the spin-offs, and then you've got more and more. The more we allow in, the more they will use and abuse us. So we should have already had that. But let me point out, in the state of New Mexico, it's extremely hard to push environmental amendments, regulations, bills, because the oil and gas has us like this, by the balls. They run things. People complaining about price of oil, don't blame the U.S. It's all overseas. But the U.S. does control what goes on here. And right here, what's happened is, because the price of oil bottomed out like it did and hasn't come back up, you're not producing as much out here. You got oil wells shut in, not producing, waiting for a better day. And see, that's the thing. We have the luxury of doing that because we have the oil. Back in 1976, when I was in the military, we had the gas shortages. Everybody was mad because we had to drive 55. Everybody was mad because we were paying $1.25 for a gallon of gas. Well, those days are long gone, and there is no oil shortage. But the thing is, what's wrong with protecting what we do have? Why did we create this oil glut? Because these big majors wanted to make a lot of money really fast while the prices were high. Well, they worked themselves out of a job. They killed the industry by doing that. I hope they learned their lesson. But they won't, because this area is used to what they call the boom bust. Lots of bacteria with boom. When you bust, everything's quiet. But that is the way it is, and the oil companies don't listen to me. But the thing is, they are calling the shots, and that's why you will see very little regulation regarding that type of activity, trying to protect the public from natural gas, natural oils, and all this other stuff. It's hard to push. Is all I
So,
can tell you.
one of the powerful things, so in Pennsylvania, we have this kind of environmental rights amendment. It was added decades ago, and then it was misused, and it basically was stripped of its power until, fast forward, until 2012, when the state legislature wrote a very pro-fracking law, actually written by the industry, because in Pennsylvania too, right, the industry really had a stranglehold on Pennsylvania government and on the state, increasingly so. So they wrote for themselves a law, and the legislature passed it. And while fracking was already creating a lot of damage and harm in Pennsylvania, it was going to get dramatically worse. So I and my organization used this long ignored Green Amendment, Environmental Rights Amendment, and challenged that law to say it would result in a constitutional violation of the environmental rights of the people of Pennsylvania. And a very conservative Supreme Court sided with us and declared those provisions of the law to be unconstitutional. And so that's why, like, I look at a whole tech proposal, I look at what's happening with the oil and gas industry, and I think if New Mexico had a constitutional right to a healthy environment, all those ways and places that the laws are written or government is behaving to help the industry at the expense of the environment and the people, well, now the people would have the Constitution to grab a hold onto to help them.
Absolutely.
And so that's why what you just said resonates with me so strongly. And it's like, you know, there's only Pennsylvania and Montana have this kind of green amendment, and I think how powerfully helpful it could be here in the state of New Mexico.
It really could. And you know, something like that, sponsored by the right individuals and supported, would go very well. But I'll be honest with you, in New Mexico, you got to start up there, at the north, Santa Fe and Albuquerque, where our legislators congregate, and not necessarily all live there, but certainly that's where they go to share ideas and what have you. And maybe we're getting to the point where New Mexico needs protection. We need protection from our own people that are willing to sacrifice it for the bottom line.